Chad Wilson here. Today, inside the playbook, we're going to talk about personnel. What do I mean by that? If you've been watching football or you've been around people and you're hearing the game advanced, this might be more beyond high school, into college, and the NFL. But if you're in high school and you're learning this now, it's very good for you because as you continue to play, you're going to learn something about personnel and personnel groupings. So with that, you've probably played or been listening to the game or listening to a game on TV and you've heard someone say 21 personnel or 11 personnel or 10 personnel. And maybe you brushed it off and didn't pay much attention to it. Today, we're going to talk about what those numbers mean in this edition of Inside the Playbook.
Motion, cross stunt, 21 personnel, high over, offset backs.
Let's start off with the traditional, okay? So if you see an I formation, all right, where there's a fullback right there, and there's a halfback there, all right, and then there's one tight end, and there are two receivers, okay? That's one of the most basic formations in football. This right here would be called 21 personnel. And what do we mean by that? The first number is the amount of running backs that are in the game. The second number is the amount of tight ends that are in the game. So in this particular case, we have 1, 2 running backs, and here we are with Y here at the end of the line of scrimmage. That's our tight end, 1 tight end in the game, and so now we have 21 personnel, all right? 21 personnel. All right, I don't particularly care for how this blue marker is writing right now, so I'm going to switch it out for the black one. But nevertheless, this is 21 personnel. 2 running backs, 1 tight end. All right, so that tight end can be lined up anywhere. So let me give you a different example, okay? We'll rub this one out. We'll keep the offensive line in there. Team might come out in that same formation that you just saw with a fullback, halfback, got a tight end here, got a wide receiver here, but in our film study, we've already identified that a tight end could have a certain number. So let's say the tight end in this particular case wears number 85. So there could be a tight end that wears 84 and one that wears 85. So it's not necessarily the formation, because this right here could be number 85, and this could be number 84. And so, as I've told you, the tight ends through our film study, we've realized are number 85 and number 84. So because there's this alignment and this tight end is lined up out here, that doesn't make this 21 personnel. This is a tight end and that's a tight end. So this is going to be 22 personnel because we have 2 running backs and 2 tight ends in the game. It's the personnel, 22 personnel, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. Okay, doesn't matter where this guy lines up. We're more interested in the personnel, and I will explain to you in a minute why we would be concerned with that when we're trying to match up as a defense. All right, so staying on that theme, we'll rub this one out and we'll go with another personnel grouping. See if we can get that off right there. One of the more common personnel groupings that we will see in today's game, since we've turned more to passing than we have in the past, is this one right here. All right, this is the formation, but in this particular case now, let's say this isn't number 85 or 84. Neither one of those are in the game, okay? So let's just say this is number 80, this is number 81, this is number 5, that's number 2, and this is number 32, okay? We identified through film study that this is the number of the running backs, and these numbers belong to guys that are wide receivers. They look like wide receivers, they're built like wide receivers, and they're primarily used as wide receivers. In this particular case, this would be 10 personnel, because how many running backs do we have in the game? Just this one. And none of these guys that are out here, lined up here, are what we would call tight ends. They're not tight ends. So there are no tight ends in the game. So in this particular case, this is called 10 personnel. Well, let me continue the way that we had it here. 10. So there's 1 running back and 0 tight ends in this formation. No tight ends. So it's 10 personnel. So let's say they came in and they put number 85 here at the Y. That's number 85. And let's say they came out and they, instead of number 5, they had number 84 in here at this position. And just to keep things the right way, we'll put him off the line of scrimmage and we'll say that that's number 2. We'll pull Z off the line of scrimmage just to keep things the right way. All right, 84 and 85 are in the game. So in that particular case, we have how many running backs in the game? 1, but we've got now 2 tight ends. So this would now go from 10 personnel to 12 personnel. So in a nutshell, I'm explaining to you that personnel call, the first number, 1, is how many running backs are in the game. The second number, 2, is how many tight ends are in the game. So in this particular case, 1 and 2 is 12. So when you hear 12 personnel, you know there's 1 running back in the game and 2 tight ends, okay? Some teams will go so far as to down around the goal line, you might get this type of situation. Or in short yardage, you will get a tight end here. This guy can end up being a tight end. They might bring in an extra guy that's a tight end here. You got the quarterback, you've got the fullback, and you've got a running back. A real short yardage type situation. This is number 85. This is number 84. Then they brought in an extra guy, number 89, who plays tight end in these specific situations, and he's playing there. And so now we have 1, 2 running backs in the game, and 1, 2, 3 tight ends. That's 3. 2 running backs, 3 tight ends. 23 personnel we have. So why do we need to know this? Why would we even be counting the numbers of running backs and tight ends in the game? Why do we care about that? Well, as you start moving up in the game, and maybe even now in high school as things are starting to get a little more specialized, you're trying to match up your personnel on defense with the kind of personnel that they have on offense. So to give you an example, team comes out in 10 personnel, which we've already described as 0 tight ends in the game and 1 running back. And they come out in this particular formation. And you know, if these aren't tight ends, these are probably speedy, fast guys. And you don't really want to have you don't want to have your linebackers out here covering these guys when you know this is a pass situation. You know that this is probably a mismatch for your linebackers. So you have a coach that's up in the booth primarily, and he's looking at what's coming off the sideline, and he's going to tell down in the headset to the defensive coordinator or whatever defensive guy is down there is responsible for putting the proper guys into the game. He will yell out what personnel it is. So in this particular case, it's 10 personnel. All right. So the coach on the sidelines, usually defensive coordinator, will yell out for whatever personnel grouping he has. So now we can replace this Sam linebacker with a nickel back, and we can replace this Will backer with a dime back. And these 2 guys are defensive backs whose job it is to cover wide receivers like this. That's what they do in practice. That's what they are designed to do. Okay? And so that's why you would need to know the personnel. So let's just say it's 3rd down and 5 and you're not sure what you're going to get. And most of the time on 3rd down, you've been putting your dime and your nickel guy in. But offense throws out, they throw this out there. Okay? And let's not worry so much about where these guys are lined up. They brought in 2 tight ends. This is number 85. This is number 84. All right? So how do you prepare for that as a defensive coordinator or as a defensive team? You don't want to have your 2 nickel backs in here or your nickel and your dime back in the game when out of this formation, you know they're going to run the ball. This is a mismatch in the run game. A tight end against a nickel, a tight end against a dime back. Most of the times, that's going to be a mismatch for you. So coach is upstairs. He sees 2 tight ends coming off the field, and he knows there's 1 running back in there. He's going to yell 12 personnel. So now the defensive coordinator can make sure he doesn't have a nickel back and a dime back in there, and he gets the 2 linebackers in because he made the correct call as to what the personnel is, the personnel grouping. He knows it's 12 personnel in the game. He yells that out to the coach. And so now the coach gets the Sam backer and the Will backer back into the game. And now this is a better matchup if the team decides to run the ball up in here than having the defensive backs in there, the nickel and the dime back in there. So that's the reason why we have personnel groupings, and that's the reason why they're numbered. It's a very simple thing to call out: 12 personnel, 10 personnel, 11 personnel. Very simple call to make, and that gives a quick clue to the defensive coordinator, or like I said, the coach that's down on the field, to know what kind of personnel he needs to put in the game to match up against what the offense is putting out on the field. And that's this edition of Inside the Playbook, the little small things that you might miss. These are things you might want to know. It's better off if you do know them. It's going to help you in the game and processing information and being able to make plays out there on the field when it's your time to make those plays. Thank you very much for watching. All Eyes DB Camp. Consistency breeds results. If you like this video, I appreciate you watching it. Go ahead and like the video. And very important, subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. You'll get notifications when more videos like this and others are posted here on the channel. We'll be on a regular schedule. So again, like, drop a comment. I will see the comments. I'll respond back to you. But more importantly, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Consistency breeds results.